Hi, Dr. Rudy Cashman. Welcome to the show, our diabetes prevention, stopping, reversing type 2 diabetes. It's a national epidemic. I'm trying to do something about it. Actually, it's not that difficult. So I'd like you to listen carefully today to what I have to say. I mean, it's really a national and international epidemic. So many people going around who've been undiagnosed. And I have 1,200 books in my basement, so I know all about wellness, all about wellness. But I ran across recently a book by Joseph R. Kraft. I've had it on a previous show. You can get it on Amazon or the library. The library will get it for you. And what he really is saying, and he was a pathologist, MD pathologist, also did a lot of research on nuclear medicine, and he did autopsies on 3,000 people. So he really looked at the pathology, the bottom line. And what he really says in this little book, and you can find him on YouTube, incidentally, Joseph Kraft Insulin Response Test. You can find him on YouTube. I've already watched it 3 times now because I think it is so important. And what he really said after all that, blood sugar, almost irrelevant. It's the serum insulin you need to check, and you'll catch this disease very early, very early. Yeah. So let's go through his book today a little bit. And it's beautiful to read. I could barely put it down. And what he's really saying is the very earliest diagnosis of diabetes is neither by fasting blood sugars, nor by glycated hemoglobin, that's the HbA1c we all think is a screening test, but only by insulin assays with normal glucose tolerance as affirmed in the text. Yeah. For example, he studied 14,328 people at the St. Joe Hospital in Chicago. Yeah, he's that close. And if you watch him on the TV show, he's 92 years old, sitting there in shorts and speaking to a doctor. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago. But just to listen to him very calmly explain everything. And the most shocking thing, really, that he spoke about to me was really shocking, that what he's saying is, except for the 1, 2, or 3 people who have conduction problems of the heart, fibrillation, things like that, the other 95, 97% of the people have diabetes. Said if they go to the emergency room, had a heart attack, or have vascular disease, they're diabetic. And if they're not diagnosed, they just missed the diagnosis. Interesting. It's interesting because it tells us we could prevent type 2 diabetes, which you can the majority of the time. You don't get all these heart attacks and strokes we're looking at. Yeah, so very, very critical thing. Let me read you a couple more quotes. And that's the purpose of the show, to let you know that we can prevent, stop, reverse type 2 diabetes most of the time, and quickly. Yes, why quickly? Because if you do have it, let's say you've been diagnosed now, that if you eat the right way, okay, exercise a little bit, take a walk, you can get rid of type 2 diabetes in about a month, maybe even less. Yeah. In many books, Dr. Furman's books, End of Diabetes, Goodbye Diabetes, Wes Youngberg, Blood Sugar Solutions, Mark Hyman, Dr. Esselstyn's books, many others. It's all in their books. So I'm coming from science. And this thing about ordering serum insulins, from my previous shows, I've been speaking about this for years. And now I finally find the book and watch the YouTube show of Joseph Kraft, and that's really where it started. But maybe even a little bit of time before that. So this is out of his book here. The very earliest diagnosis of diabetes identified by hyperinsulinemia, in other words, raised insulin level, by insulin assay with normal glucose tolerance occurred in 1975. So they do a glucose tolerance test, which was considered the gold standard, where you swallow 75 grams of sugar and they check, or 100, either one, and check your blood, fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3, 4, 5, glucose tolerance, okay? It may be normal. And what he's saying is, you may have diabetes anyway. And now the gold standard should be, remember, serum insulin, fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3. You can really stop at 2 hour. What he says is, if your serum insulin is over 40 at 2 hours, you get diabetes. That's a definitive test. Very simple, very simple. If you don't have insurance, you can get it done probably less than $100. And you know whether you have or not. Is that important? I think it's critical, because 50 diseases at least, maybe up to 100, are associated with diabetes. They can be totally avoided. From dementia, memory loss. You think Alzheimer's disease is some genetic disease which the pharmaceutical companies want to make you think? It's 70, 80% related to diabetes. What's the reason for that? Because the insulin level is elevated in diabetes, and you need to use your IDE enzyme, insulin degrading enzyme, to get rid of the insulin. It has to be metabolized because the brain uses mainly sugar for energy, okay? Can use ketones, but it's mainly sugar. And the IDE enzyme, because you have elevated serum insulin, because you are diabetic, and the brain needs the sugar to work, that IDE enzyme is totally used up metabolizing insulin, but it has one other job. And what's that? To degrade amyloid. Amyloid is the protein between your brain cells that interferes with nerve conduction, gums up your brain, causes dementia, and also is affected, doesn't degrade neurofibrillary tangles that are inside your cells that help cause the tau, that help cause Alzheimer's. So diabetes is the cause, 70-80% of dementia and memory loss. Get rid of type 2 diabetes, which you can do in 30 days, which I'm teaching you today. The rate of dementia and quote, Alzheimer's disease would go way down. That's the path. So what I'm saying is, you get rid of type 2 diabetes, you're getting rid of 50 to 100 other chronic, long-term illnesses. A lot of suffering, deaths, and medical costs involved. Avoidable. Our government doesn't teach it. I teach it. Many other providers, books, teach it. American Diabetic Association doesn't teach it. And Dr. Kraft warns the American, because he tried, the American Diabetic Association has a lot of non-providers who have a financial interest in the organization involved with it. And he wonders if that is not part of why they don't wrap their arms around this. Isn't this interesting? So So in 1975, Dr. Stout, S-T-O-U-T, investigations and research of the 1970s identified increased insulin hyperinsulinemia as a primary cause affecting all arterial vessels, including capillaries. That's the small blood vessels. Isn't that interesting? So Dr. Stout really was the original person. And then Dr. Kraft confirmed it with his detailed autopsies by looking at the pathology of the heart. You know, another interesting thing I learned there is that the type 1 diabetic, which has no insulin, okay, no insulin. Dr. Kraft did autopsies on people who had type 1 diabetes, had no insulin, and guess what? He found no arterial disease. Yeah. So, no arterial disease. So, again, proof that insulin is the problem. Of course, the insulin saved the life of those type 1 diabetics. But the ones who died without ever getting the insulin, where the diagnosis was missed, he found there was no evidence of arterial disease in their body. Interesting. And Dr. Stout's description speaks about the microvascular too, the small vessels of the retina and the hands and feet. That's why a lot of type 2 diabetics early on, what's their major complaint? Eye problems, hand numbness, foot numbness. But then they already get the disease. We want to catch it before that time. Get a serum insulin. As they said in the cover of Dr. Kraft's book, Diabetes Epidemic and You. Should everyone be tested? Question mark. Absolutely not. Only those that are concerned about their future or your children's future. He actually recommends that we start testing people at age 3 because he studied children. And I'll go over that. Yeah, he studied the children too, in those 14,328 people. He studied kids too. Isn't that fascinating? So until the earliest diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which is an insulin assay, okay, with normal glucose tolerance, is utilized, the Stop Diabetes campaign by the American Diabetic Association didn't help that much. Helped a little, but they missed the point. The information was out there. Well, they're supported by a lot of industry, and maybe, the ADA launched a new movement, Stop Diabetes, in 2009, and an association campaign aims to put a halt to this lack of awareness and misinformation so direction of prevalence in this country can change. So more diabetics were occurring, and they're going to double, I think, in another 10, 15 years if we don't do something about it. I'm trying to do something about it. Okay? So what are you saying? But cardiovascular disease conferences are legion. They're all over the place. They're all over the place, okay? They excel in addressing clinical management and life-saving advances. They're talking about electrical conduction here, okay? Matter of fact, I read a book by a cardiologist. I just finished it the other day from Columbia University, and he describes all about the electrical conduction of the heart and angioplasty and cardiac surgery in every detailed thing, and only on the last 10 pages or so does he address the way of eating, the diet that represents 95% of the problem at the end. And then he's skeptical about it. A lot of science has developed since D. Ornish, proven it. The books that I mentioned to you, for example. So why are they not doing this? I got to think this doctor from Columbia University is sincere. That's why he wrote the book. But he don't get it. And you don't get it. 98% of vascular disease is due to diabetes. Dr. Kraft proved it through autopsies. They have stopped doing autopsies since about the 1970s. And now it's MRI and scanning, so they're not really looking at the pathology and not fully understanding what it's all about. The oral glucose tolerance test, which I've spoken about, that's without the serum insulins for the time being here. Okay, they gave 100 grams of sugar and ran it for about 3 hours. That test came about by Dr. Janney, Janney, and Dr. Isaacson, Isaacsson, 1918. So it's been around for a long time. It was really discovered for testing hormonal changes in the body. It wasn't really meant for diabetes. So then the test was modified 1925 to include also a half hour instead of just 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, with fasting and 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour blood sugar specimens, but no insulin was included. Now, insulin itself was discovered by Banting and Best around 1923 or so at that time. And what was interesting too is before the discovery of insulin, which puts sugar into the cell, the type 1 diabetic, most of them died and wasted away. But the thing they used to recommend at that time, before that time, to save some, we still had a little bit of function of the pancreas, high-fat diet. Mm-hmm. And it helped quite a bit. But soon, as insulin was discovered, we gave insulin. Harvard University, their institute, I think was it Salk? I think Salk Institute, they went back to allowing people to eat carbohydrates. Big mistake if they had continued with the fat diet, because what's happened now, if you're giving insulin, you eat bad food, the insulin goes up in the blood, and what does insulin do? It brings sugar into the cell, but it also opens the door to the cell to let fat in. Then you gain weight, and the heavier you are, the higher the insulin levels are, the higher inflammation is your body, and diseases go up. Many years later, they retracted that too, and their book of teaching it has changed again. But isn't that fascinating? So when people take insulin pumps, for example, eat anything you want, and they just increase their dosage you take, but insulin causes stiffening of the arteries, dementia, increased rates of cancer, inflammation in the joints all over the body, for example. So insulin is not an innocent bystander. So times will change, but it will take time. In 1997, the American Diabetic Association issued new diagnostic and classification data. They said fasting blood sugar should be less than 110, but as you notice now, I think it's 100. As a matter of fact, I would say, and Dr. Furman, Dr. Hyman would say the blood sugar ought to be, frankly, under 85 or even 80 to move it back further, and they'll say you have diabetes at 126. But I think Dr. Kroger and I would say maybe you get diabetes if you're fasting insulin. Following glucose tolerance test, it's over 40 at 2 hours, you got diabetes. Maybe that's the correct way to do it, okay? And at that time, they changed the word in 1997 to juvenile diabetes. They were then called type 1, and adult was called type 2. And now they're speaking about dementia and memory loss. They called it type 3 diabetes because it's that coming. So in 2006, The American Diabetic Association, the expert committee, again changed things, and now they say fasting blood sugar should be less than 100. Remember, what I'm saying is it should be lower than that. And HbA1c, which we commonly use for screening, is not a screening test, it's a maintenance test, because it's later in the disease the sugar's up. Remember I said it's even the glycinated sugar, the HbA1c, is not the answer. It's the serum insulin that's the answer, okay? And impaired glucose, fasting glucose, they would say 100 to 125. This is the ADA in 2006. And a 2-hour post-low glucose less than 140 would, in essence, what we're saying, the diagnosis is always changing. And I say, let's change it further, because we want to catch these people on the path to diabetes, on the path much sooner, because we can prevent 50 to 100 illnesses. This is a national epidemic that is preventable, stoppable, and reversible. Join me in this fight. But it's going to take some people to really speak up, maybe take on some of the diabetic educators, for example, who tolerate this. They should be in the forefront. They should be the soldiers in the front line. Okay, I'm a wellness doctor. I'm not a diabetic specialist or a diabetic educator. They should be doing it. I'm doing it, and it's my pleasure. A lot of people come up to me and say, I lost my diabetes. Wonderful. It happens to me every day. And because I'm on TV and radio, and I've written books, and I got this TV show, so thank God. That's wonderful. But we need to be embraced by the public health. They're missing it too. Actually, I went at the state level with some of my books. I started with a lady in charge of the diabetic education, state of Indiana, and her knowledge of diabetes was very poor. She was giving a lecture at a wellness conference. She had never read any of the books I mentioned to you. Not one of them. And I named 2 others. I stood up right in her class, hadn't read them. So I invited myself to come talk to myself. She agreed to see me. And she had 2 other ladies there, a wonderful lady in charge of family practice, another one in charge of chronic disease, and they were very nice to me. Which I asked them, could I see the boss, Dr. Adams? They said no, but I called him myself. He did see me. I went to see him with 2 red bags full of books. He hadn't read none of them either. I couldn't believe it. In charge of public health, state of Indiana. Now he's a Surgeon General of the United States. Do you see the problem we have? I'm not blaming Pence here, because he doesn't know this. And and are you hearing about preventing, stopping, reversing diabetes from a national level, big time? We're even wondering if the president, who's overweight, his fasting blood sugar was 99 when he was running in the primary. I heard that, I read that. Now he does not reveal it. You notice he had a physical the other day. He does not reveal it. He needs to be the leader on health in the nation. He needs to be the leader. I'm trying to do it. Help me with this, because this is epidemic. This is killing many more people than wars or anything else that's occurring. We have a national epidemic of type 2 diabetes, and yet the government part, the educational part, the people are marching in the front line on teaching you how to prevent, reverse it. I think maybe, I don't know for sure, the lobbying money. Is it the money, honey? Yeah, I kind of wonder. But anyway, thanks for listening to me. We'll have this show every Monday. I will continue on this path. And I really thank Dr. Kraft for this wonderful book he's put out. And I'd like you to confirm what I'm telling you. Watch this YouTube show, Joe Kraft, K-R-A-F-T, Insulin Response Test. It's about 30 minutes. Watch that. Maybe if you need additional information. To me, this is a Bible of health. Yeah. that book is the Bible of Health. I'll hold it up once more. I'll hold it up for you once more. Maybe you could get to the library. I think I paid $17 for it. Buy it at the library, or buy it. Amazon is where I got it, and read it, and you will then have great knowledge. You could help yourself or maybe friends. We all get a friend that's diabetic. I got lots of them, even in my family. Okay, and it's this judgment-free zone. It's about education. Why did I do this today? I care about you. I'm a doctor. I love you. I love all the people. Okay, join me in this. But I'm going to have other people that need to hold my hand to get the job done. I can't do it just myself. But I'm starting to get somewhere. Thanks for listening. Maybe see you on the next show or one of my lectures. So at the Three Rivers Pharmacy, a lot of Townhouse or Warsaw. Once a month I give a lecture. You can go to Cashman Facebook. All that information is on there. Even some of these TV shows are posted there. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Namaste. Namaste.